Hello, world history. This video is for people who are interested in the U.S.-Iran conflict. And we're going to look at the 1979 Iranian Revolution in order to get some insight to our current issues with Iran. Okay, so what you've got are in the textbook in this chapter from the Cold War, chapter 33 on page 986. You can see 986 has information about Iran here, okay, up until there. And then also I give you a video. Here you go. You notice the same person here as in here. It's Ayatollah Khomeini, who's the leader of the revolution. And here's the page where we're going to be writing down information about it. So it says editorial. This is the final project. You'll write a short editorial where you give an opinion about a current event and use a historical event as an example to inform you. And so today, Monday, you're researching the historic event. You're going to write the causes, course, effects, and lessons learned. Tomorrow, we're briefly going to look at a current event. We'll look at a problem that's currently facing the United States and Iran. And you'll write how the past event on Wednesday, you'll write how the thoughts about the event from the past should guide our thinking about our present problem. You don't need to solve a current problem. You're not going to solve the U.S.-Iran conflict, but you can provide insight and reasoning using this historic example. And so today we're going to do the research. The topic is U.S. and Iran. And the historic example is the 1979 Iranian Revolution, okay? And so we're going to find information about the Iranian Revolution here and in the video, and I'm going to tell you in my notes today. So I'll upload a copy of this, okay? And so in the middle, I've got Iranian Revolution, happened in 1979, and as a result of this revolution, the domestic policies became extreme and religious inside Iran. Iran's foreign policy was against the USA and US allied nations. Iran took hostages US American citizens who were in the embassy from 1979 to 1981. And they developed a theocracy, or a theocracy is a government that's controlled by religion. Okay, and so why did this happen? Well, let's go back. There's going to be background and causes, effects, and some lessons learned, okay? So background is that you have U.S. imperialism for Iran's oil and their markets. Markets meaning for their large population that the U.S. can sell their goods to and for their oil. Notice Iran is here. It borders the USSR. It also borders the U.S. ally Turkey. It borders the U.S. ally Pakistan, and it also borders Afghanistan, which was close with the USSR in 1979, and there was a war there. This is one of the other videos. And so here you've got Iran, there's Iraq right there, and Saudi Arabia, which is also a U.S. ally. And so Iran is a strategic site, not just for the oil in the ground, but also for the countries that surrounds it, especially for the United States. The cause is there's a lot of Iranian nationalism against the United States. Remember, imperialism means the domination of one nation by another. For economically, politically, and socially, the U.S. dominated Iran's economics, especially their oil. Politically, even when Iran chose to elect and support a leader whose name was Mossadegh, the United States instead intervened and had a coup. They removed Mossadegh, this was in 1953, and put in their own leader, the Shah, like a king. So they had a monarchy that was supportive of the U.S. and U.S. businesses. And so Iranians looked at their government and they saw that it was a puppet government controlled by the United States. The wealth of their nation was going to the United States. And so a lot of nationalism to have an Iranian controlled government was bubbling up against the United States. And when people are pushed into a corner, they tend to adopt extreme ideas. And so there were extreme religious groups led by ayatollahs or leaders. And one named Ayatollah Khomeini, he was able to coordinate revolutions and revolts throughout Iran in 1978 against the USA, gain support of the people. Remember, nationalism has to do with a common language or religion or shared history. And so this religious group is harnessing the Iranian people's nationalism to overthrow the U.S. backed government that was in Iran. And they did. And in 1979, they overthrew the U.S. leader. The Shah was kicked out, and they established a Muslim, an extremist Muslim government. An effect of this is that Iran, since this revolution, has been distrustful of the United States. The USA has allies in Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, in Turkey, in Pakistan, and so they're surrounded by countries that were loyal to the United States. Iran, since then, has been led by radical religious leaders, by the Ayatollahs. Iran supports anti-U.S. organizations, terrorist organizations, and other anti-United States organizations. And likewise, the United States supports enemies of Iran. And so Saudi Arabia is an enemy of Iran. Iraq is an enemy of Iran. While Iran was a religious government, Iraq was a secular or non-religious government. Iraq was led by a dictator named Saddam Hussein. And Iran and Iraq fought each other during the 1980s, the Iran-Iraq War, and from 1980 to 1988. And the United States supplied Iraq with weapons to fight against Iran. And so we were supplying Saddam Hussein, including chemical weapons, and they fought the Iran-Iraq War over this border. And much like World War I, it was a stalemate. There were trenches. There was chemical warfare. Over 1 million people died in this war, and the USA was supporting Iraq. And so not only is Iran upset at the United States for the history of imperialist domination over Iran and a coup to overthrow their leader in 1953, but they're also increasingly angry at the United States for supporting their enemies, including war crimes against them with chemical warfare throughout the 1980s after this revolution. And so Iran has become more extreme over this time when, to fight the United States. Pakistan is a U.S. ally that has a nuclear weapon. They have an atom bomb. Iran has been trying to get an atom bomb also as a way to deter these nuclear countries that are within the United States, that are allies to the United States. And also there are nuclear weapons. The United States has nuclear weapons in Turkey, if you remember from if you look at the Cuban Missile Crisis video. Okay, and so Iran continues to pursue nuclear weapons. The U.S. also supports Saudi Arabia, right here, which is an enemy of Iran. And Iraq, after the U.S. invasion of Iraq, this country is splintered apart, and there are different groups within Iraq that are supported by either Iran or Saudi Arabia or the United States. And ISIS, which is the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, which is right around there, is also close by. And so this region, you could blame some of the instability, or a lot of the instability, on the imperialism or the actions of the United States throughout the 1950s, the 70s, and the 80s. So what are lessons from the Iranian Revolution? Well, imperialism causes enemies. Not just the competition between nations to dominate another nation, but also nationalism that rises up. And so Iranian nationalism, if you remember, causes of war, MAIN, militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. There has always been a high chance of war between Iran and the United States because of rising militarism, because of alliances that U.S. has with Pakistan, that formerly had with Iraq, with Turkey, with Saudi Arabia, of U.S. imperialism, and of the intense nationalism within Iran of the extreme religious and militant sect or groups that live in Iran. Threatening a nation causes it to make more extreme decisions and seek more resistance and security. And so while there is a time for war, sometimes a threat or the use of force will create more violence and a cycle of violence. And we've seen that especially in the conflict between the US and Iran, where it's back and forth and back and forth. And Iran feels like they're in a corner. At this point, the United States has troops in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey's a NATO member, US troops in Iraq, and we saw that Iran feels surrounded by the United States. And so it is not surprising that they're lashing out at the United States as well and pursuing to build an atom bomb. But the Iranian Revolution was Iran's successful overthrow of U.S. imperialism. However, U.S. imperialism has continued to threaten Iran, and Iran as well as continued to threaten the United States' interests. All right, so that is a bit of the history about Iran and the United States and the revolution there. And I hope this helps you put it into perspective, and we'll be talking about it more tomorrow. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.